Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. My thumb hit send before my brain caught up. I'm Alex, 28. I stared at the screen. Wrong thread, not Mark. Mara's name sat on top. A small typing bubble pulsed like a siren. Blue folder at your mom's, my text read. A photo rode with it like a nail. Prenup addendum glared across the first page. I locked the phone, then unlocked it fast. Her call landed instantly. The phone buzzed twice. I answered on speaker, hand already sweating. "What is this?" Her voice came clipped and cold. Air thinned around me like an elevator drop. "A vendor packet." I forced breath and steadiness. "Then open it for me," she snapped back. Silence stretched. I watched my reflection in glass. Now Alex flipped the page. I slid the photo viewer with a thumb. Line items filled the screen like trap wires. Debts, inheritance, signatures waiting on dotted lines. Her last name sat under a blank space. "That is not vendors," she breathed through teeth. "How long have you had this?" Her cough spiked. I paced the hallway and counted steps. "Ask Mark," I said, voice turning gravel. She hung up. A second later, a ping. Family group chat lit up with her screenshot. No caption, just the image and my message. Notifications stacked so fast they blurred. Mark called 3 times. I let them ring out. Mom texted one sentence with no emoji. "Everyone at the house by 6, period heavy." Dad added, "Keep calm," another period like steel. I grabbed keys because moving felt like thinking. The folder sat at my place miles away. No time to backtrack without raising alarms. I headed to my parents' street anyway. Red light. I drummed the wheel and cursed. Mark's name flashed again. I picked up. "Tell me it's a joke," his breath scraped. "It was in the stack," I said. "You delivered it," he shot back hot. "You knew." Tires behind me blared and edged. I saw a cover in a tab. "Then you knew enough, Alex." I turned onto our block and slowed. Cars lined the curb like a blockade. Front door stood open, voices pushing outward. Something already broke before I arrived. Mara's parents stood inside the entry, rigid. Mara held her phone like a blade. Mom hovered near the kitchen doorway, pale calm. Dad's arms crossed, jaw locked tight. Mara lifted the phone and aimed at me. "You sent it," she said without blinking. "You dropped it at their house," her chin lifted. "So you're part of it." I moved a folder, I answered and steadied. "Look at the timestamp on my text." No spin. Mara's mother cut in hard. "You brought a contract under a friendly label." Mark paced near the table, eyes never settling. "Say you messed up and you're done," he barked. He dragged a hand through short hair. "Do not make me pick sides tonight." My phone buzzed again, group chat boiling. An uncle asked what the document meant. A cousin replied with a wilting emoji. Mom's "please quiet down" vanished under more pings. I killed the sound and met Mara's stare. "You want the rest of the pages?" I asked. Her lashes fluttered once, then stilled. "Bring proof or this wedding stops." Dad opened a drawer and shut it slow. "Talk in the living room," he urged. No one moved. The hallway felt narrower. Every breath met a wall and bounced. Mara took one step closer, screen raised high. "Blue folder at your mom's," she read aloud. "You made it easy, you drew me in." She waited for me to flinch. "I can drive and fetch the folder," I said. 10 minutes there, 10 back, straight run. "Not alone," her father answered, eyes never blinking. "You do not get to edit." Mark grabbed his jacket and tossed me keys. "I'm riding with you," he said low. "If this is Mom's idea, I need ears." His knuckles popped as he clenched. Mara blocked the doorway and held out a palm. "One thing first," she said with steady breath. "Do you believe this contract protects me?" Her voice shook at the edge. I swallowed hard and felt heat climb. "I believe hiding it hurt you today." "That is not an answer," she shot back. "Pick a side with words." Mark's jaw flexed. He waited for mine. Mom's hand hovered at her throat, careful. Dad watched the keys glint in my palm. I turned for the door in cold air. 10 minutes, I said and pushed past. Mara lowered her hand but not her stare. Mark shouldered beside me without another word. We stepped into the night like a fuse. Tires barked as we peeled from the curb. Straight there, straight back, Mark muttered without looking over. He tapped his knee and watched the mirror. Do not talk in circles tonight. I grab it, you watch me, I said. He nodded once and stared through the windshield. Phone vibration rattled the console between us. Neither of us reached for it. A cyclist cut in, I braked hard and cursed. Focus, Mark snapped and grabbed the handle. Did Mom loop you into anything else? His jaw worked like he was chewing nails. Nothing, she asked a quick favor today. He exhaled and rubbed his forehead. Once. That favor nuked dinner and both families. I let the silence bite my tongue. We turned onto my block and parked crooked. 2 minutes, I said and hit unlock. Mark followed close and kept his head down. Camera on, he added and lifted his phone. Inside, I headed straight to the desk. The folder waited where I left it earlier. Mark filmed my hands opening it wide. No edits, no substitutions, keep it clean. Staples glinted along the spine like teeth. I scanned the first page and swallowed hard. A new sheet poked from the middle. Uneven edge, fresh print, different stock. Mark noticed and leaned in close. Pull it, he whispered like a referee. I eased it free and held it flat. An add-on titled Interim Conditions stared back. He blinked twice and pointed at a line. Distribution freeze until notarization. That was not here yesterday. My throat tightened as I traced the margin. A tiny handwritten note sat under the title. Bring to meeting discreetly, avoid discussion. Initials at the end, MC, neat and sharp. Mark sucked air through his teeth. That is Mom's handwriting. I lifted the camera and zoomed in. Dates on the footer showed today's timestamp. Someone swapped pages before the screenshot, I said. Or they rushed a last-minute change. My phone buzzed with Mara's name across it. I answered on speaker for proof. You reached it, she said, her breath clipped. What did you find on the inside? A surprise insert with today's date, I said. Also a note with 2 initials. Read them, she urged over the line. MC, I said and met Mark's stare. A long pause filled the car lot quiet. Come back with the whole packet, she said. Do not separate anything or I walk. The call clicked off like a switch. Mark paced a tight loop by the door. If this is Mother's push, I confront her. He pressed fingers to his eyelids and steadied. You keep the neutral stance while I swing. We need chain of custody, I countered fast. We video the trip both directions tonight. He swallowed and nodded once in agreement. Fine, bag it and rolls. I slid everything back in order, edges aligned. Mark watched every move like a ref. He sealed it inside a plain envelope. Now no one cries tampering. We stepped back out and locked the place. A neighbor lifted an eyebrow and paused mid-step. Mark flashed a tight smile and kept moving. My pulse beat quick in my wrists. In the car again, he put it on the dash. My screen lit with another family ping. A new photo hovered in the preview bar. Mara's mother with tears standing in her eyes. I refused to open it while driving. Mark scrolled anyway and sighed through his nose. Her parents want full transparency on assets tonight. He looked at me, they think we hid accounts. We bring the pages and nothing else, I said. Any extra talk gets used against us. Honesty is extra talk when you're late, he replied. He turned the camera toward the windshield. Halfway back, traffic boxed us near an intersection. A black SUV eased up on our left. The passenger window slid down a crack. Mara's father leaned out and waved us over. We pulled into a side lot together fast. He stepped out and squared up beside us. Do you have the packet intact? He asked. Mark nodded and pointed toward the dashboard. Hand it to me now, he continued. Both couples review it before more shouting. Mark hesitated and glanced at my phone. I held up the recording and waited. Hold on, I said with steady breath. We deliver as agreed at the house. He measured my face like it might lie. He extended his palm and didn't blink. Trust is gone, he said with level tone. You want fairness, I want evidence in my hands. Mark cut between us and broke the stare. We ride together, we enter together. Mara's father waited for a beat. Then he opened his back door wide. Fine, document the transfer in my car. His eyes sharpened, no stops, no detours. I slid into the rear seat with the envelope. Mark climbed in front and kept filming. The SUV pulled out and merged smoothly. My heartbeat counted the streetlights like a metronome. Half a minute later, my screen flashed again. Mom's text appeared simple and tight. We can resolve this if handled with grace. Mark snorted once and stared ahead. I typed one line and hit send. We will arrive with everything untouched. 3 dots floated and then vanished. My hands felt colder than the glass. Mara's father cleared his throat and watched the mirror. I do not care about anyone's pride, he said. I care about lawful process before vows. He looked at the envelope like a fuse. I slid the pages slightly to confirm order. A second handwritten note hid behind the add-on. Different initials this time, NF small and fast. Mark saw it and closed his eyes. Who is NF? He murmured under breath. Mara's father focused on the road and winced. Her aunt's lawyer, he said without hesitation. Tian. She warned us about surprise clauses last month. The car rolled to a stop at our street. My parents' driveway glowed with gathered silhouettes. Mara stood at the threshold with shoulders squared. She raised her phone and waited for us. Record everything, Mark whispered as we stepped out. I want clean lines when this explodes. I held the envelope like it might bite. The night pressed in with quiet before impact. Mara stood planted at the doorway like a checkpoint. On video, she reminded, lifting her phone higher. I raised the bundle for the frame. Her lips pressed thin as thread. We crossed the threshold in a slow file. Her father swept behind us to close traffic. Mark pointed at the coffee table and nodded once. Transfer here, camera rolling, no loose claims. I placed the stack in the center and stepped back. Mara counted pages without blinking once. Everyone watches while I number them, she said. A pen clicked twice like a countdown. Mom hovered by the archway with clenched hands. Let's keep this respectful and clear, she offered. Mara didn't look up as she wrote numbers. Respect starts when surprises stop. Dad shifted weight and stared at the floor. If we discuss calmly, we finish quickly. Mark flicked his gaze up toward him. Quickly got us here, slowly might save us. Mara's thumb paused over the added sheet. She traced the margin and read the title. Interim conditions, effective upon receipt of signature. Her eyes lifted toward my mother. Mom straightened and tried a small nod. Temporary measures are common in complex households. Mara slid the page closer to her camera. Temporary pressure looks permanent when blindsided. Her father leaned in and tapped the footer. Today's date, no prior circulation listed anywhere. Mark's mouth tightened as he checked our recording. Chain of custody remains clean so far. I pulled my phone closer and opened notes. We log each step in plain language tonight. Mara looked over my screen and approved with silence. Include who touched what and when. She turned to the second handwritten line. NF. She glanced at her father for confirmation. He gave one quick nod without breaking focus. Retain counsel before any ink, he muttered. Mom's chest rose once and then stalled. Outside attorneys escalate what family can resolve. Mara finally faced her square on. Outside attorneys appear when family acts like adversaries. Mark set his palms on the table hard. We are headed for an implosion on camera. He lowered his voice and tried again. Let me read the disputed clauses aloud. Read them, Mara agreed, eyes still cold. He cleared his throat and started with definitions. Every third line, Mara's father made a mark. At line 7, he snapped his pen shut. Stop at this distribution freeze, he instructed. Explain who benefits during the hold period. Mom answered first with a careful rhythm. Both branches retain control pending notarization. Mara's jaw flexed as she watched my screen. Control means what if we disagree tomorrow? Dad glanced at his notes and lifted a brow. Control means nothing moves until the meeting. Which meeting? Mara asked, voice tightening. The one no one invited me to. A calendar card popped on Mom's phone loudly. Mark recorded the alert as proof. Mara held out a palm for the device. Mom hesitated, then placed it in her hand. The event read review terms with families tonight. No guest list, just a timestamp. That explains the sudden energy, Mara said. She returned the phone with a slow push. Her father folded his arms across his chest. We proceed under our review, not yours. Mark turned the page and kept reading. My camera shook once as I adjusted grip. He reached a clause on shared liabilities. Mara exhaled hard and tapped the margin. Who provided these numbers? She asked sharply. Mine look rounded to guesses, not facts. Mom's eyes flicked to Dad without moving her head. Our accountant drafted estimates for efficiency. Estimates feed mistrust faster than lies, Mara warned. She circled 2 lines and underlined the totals. Her father took a photo for his file. Mark pushed the packet back to center. Dad lifted another sheet from a side stack. Here is a supporting schedule for the figures. Mara's mother reached first and blocked his hand. Supporting to whom? To your own assumptions. A landline rang in the kitchen and stopped. Everyone froze, then pretended nothing had changed. Mark rubbed the bridge of his nose once. We are drifting, focus on the hot points. I raised my phone and scrolled to notes. Hot point 1, inserted page with fresh date. Hot point 2, off-calendar pre-meeting discovered. Hot point 3, estimated liabilities needing verification. Mara nodded without lifting her gaze. Add 4, outside counsel initials on inside margin. Her father added quietly, eyes still scanning. Add 5, requirement that favors delay on one side. Mom pressed 2 fingers to her lips and steadied. These provisions mirror protections you requested earlier. Mara's mother scoffed once and crossed her ankles. We requested clarity, you built traps. Dad stepped forward and angled toward Mark. We can redline in real time together. Mark considered the idea and looked to Mara. Do we adjust now or adjourn clean? Mara rolled the pen between thumb and knuckle. We mark items and pause for independent review. She looked around the ring of watching faces. Any signing tonight is off the table. A chorus of overlapping breaths filled the room. Mom started to object but caught herself quickly. Her shoulders fell a notch as she swallowed. Then we mark items in recess. I handed Mara the pen without touching skin. She drew bold hashes by each disputed section. Mark recorded the marks with exaggerated steadiness. My fingers tingled like I had touched current. When she reached the margin initials, she stopped. Who asked this to be included here? Silence stretched until I heard the fridge hum. Mom's eyes met mine for half a beat. Mara caught the glance and followed it across. Her father took 1 step to block the view. Answer the question while we are present. His voice had no tremor left. Mom drew breath and let it out slow. I asked for the interim sheet this afternoon. She looked at Mara and then at Mark. I believed it would reduce chaos. Mark's hand slid off the table and hung. What chaos were you preventing exactly? He waited, jaw set, eyes flat as stone. Mom's answer faltered before it arrived. Dad stepped in and lifted a palm halfway. We anticipated disagreements after dinner and prepared contingencies. Mara's pen tapped twice like a tiny hammer. Contingencies that never mentioned my participation. Her father checked the time and pocketed his phone. We have enough for counsel to review thoroughly. He looked to me with something like gratitude. Thank you for running this cleanly. Mara gathered the packet and hugged it close. She faced Mark and searched his face hard. Come tomorrow at 10 with actual numbers. Without them, the ceremony pauses. Mark glanced at me, then at our parents. His mouth opened once and then shut. He nodded and wiped his palms on jeans. I will bring statements and nothing else. Mara's mother moved toward the door with purpose. Her father followed, already texting someone briskly. Mara walked last and paused on the porch. She turned back only toward me. You stumbled into this, then you owned it. Her chin dipped once, a small acknowledgement. Keep your phone on and keep recording. She left the door half open behind her. Silence fell like a heavy blanket we could not lift. Dad reached for plates that no one wanted anymore. Mom sat on the edge of a chair, small. Mark stared at the blank screen of his phone. He finally looked up and pointed at me. Tomorrow is a reckoning at 10 sharp. We dig everything up before they do. His voice broke on the last word. 9:42, the banking app locked me out. Wrong code, the screen flashed again with stubborn calm. Mark yanked the phone from my hand and tried. 2 tries left, 10 o'clock looked closer than breath. We go to the branch, he barked and grabbed keys. Printed statements with stamps and arguments right now. I pulled up directions while jogging to the car. My stomach flipped when the timer ticked down. Traffic boxed us one light after another. Mara's text landed like a gavel on stone. Bring proof of the transfer marked garden project. Mark swallowed hard and did not answer. What is garden project? I asked without blinking. He held the wheel and stared through the windshield. A short-term move between accounts, he muttered, voice thin. Context will make sense with the right papers. We slid into a parking spot and ran. Inside, a clerk raised a hand to slow us. Account holder only for full statements, she warned gently. Mark patted pockets and went pale. Wallet, I whispered, please tell me you have it. He closed his eyes and shook his head once. I left it at the house, he grimaced. Can I verify another way? The clerk glanced to the back and hesitated. Manager needs 2 identifiers, not 1. Mark dug out his phone and opened the app. Face ID unlocked, the screen brightened with relief. He held it up with shaky arms. Photo ID in the digital wallet, he pushed. The manager stepped out and studied the display. Last 4 digits and recent charges, she tested. Mark recited purchases with clipped precision. The manager nodded once and waved us forward. Printer will stamp with today's seal, she said. Give me 10 minutes, no mistakes. 9:50, I whispered and checked my timer. Mara's next message waited in the banner. Also bring the memo that says patio materials. My throat tightened as I looked at Mark. That memo exists too, he admitted without flinching. It tags the same amount from April. Why 2 labels for 1 transfer? I pushed. Because Mom flagged it and I relabeled. I opened his email on the branch computer. He typed the credentials and watched my hands. Search bar filled with numbers instead of words. I entered the amount and hit return. 1 thread popped with a tidy invoice. Vendor name looked familiar from family gatherings. I clicked open and scrolled to the footer. Recipient line showed an LLC tied to our mother. Mark gripped the edge of the desk and froze. That is not a vendor we hired, he breathed. I printed the page and slid it beneath the stack. We bring it before they claim concealment. The manager returned with a clipped bundle. Each page carried a fresh stamp in the corner. She added a letter confirming account ownership today. Do not lose that page, she warned. 9:57, I said and gathered everything. We sprinted for the door and nearly collided. A woman stepped into our path with quiet intent. From council, she said and offered an envelope. Mark didn't take it, I took it. Inside sat a single request on crisp paper. Provide any cash withdrawals within 6 months. A line at the bottom read NF. I snapped a photo and sent it to Mara. Received, we are coming now, I wrote fast. She replied with a single dot like a nod. Mark squeezed the bridge of his nose. We hustled back to the car and buckled. A sedan idled across the lot facing us. The driver lifted a phone and filmed our windshield. Mark raised his own camera and filmed back. 9:59, the dashboard clock ticked loud. I floored it and merged with a hard breath. Mark stacked the documents on his lap in order. Hand me the invoice if anyone reaches first. We turned onto our street and saw clustered figures. Phones out, eyes trained, no voices yet. Mara stood front and center like a referee. I killed the engine and held the door handle. Record from your pocket, Mark whispered without looking. I tapped the button and set my jaw. We stepped out together with papers tight and squared. 10 o'clock hit as we reached the porch. I set the stack on the table and stepped back. Mara lifted her phone and nodded once toward my hands. Unseal it on camera, she instructed with steady breath. I broke the seal and spread the pages slow. Mark placed the stamped statements on top in sequence. Bank verification first, he announced with a flat tone. Mara's father held his palm out for each sheet. He checked dates and traced the memo fields. Garden project, Mara read, eyes flicking to Mark. Show the second tag you mentioned on the way. I slid the next page forward for everyone to view. Patio materials sat on the same amount. 2 labels for 1 transfer, her father observed evenly. Explain the change without drifting into guesswork. Mark's throat moved once as he braced. I corrected the description after a family concern. Mara's gaze snapped to the invoice under my elbow. Lift that one, she requested without raising her voice. I revealed the vendor bill with the familiar LLC. Her pupils tightened as she recognized the recipient line. That company traces to your mother, her father stated. He tapped the corner where the registration code lived. Mom straightened and clasped her hands at her waist. It's a coordination vehicle for shared costs. Coordination or concealment, Mara countered, pen hovering midair. Which purpose exists when the memo lines conflict? Dad reached forward for the invoice and paused mid-grab. Mark blocked his wrist with a short shake of his head. Phones around the room kept recording without mercy. I angled mine toward the table and kept silent. Mara circled the payment and underlined the account tail. Was consent requested before money moved? Mark's jaw worked as if it held sand. I moved funds between buckets to time a deposit. Deposits happen with disclosures, Mara replied without blinking. Timing is not a defense for secrecy. Her father opened a small folder and slid a notice. Preservation request from counsel, he announced with controlled calm. No deletions of texts or drafts during review. He placed copies in front of each of us. Mom took hers and folded it once with care. This escalates beyond what we intended tonight. Mara's mother leaned forward with elbows planted strong. Escalation started when the terms arrived mislabeled. I handed over the letter to the camera. My screen captured the signature NF at the bottom. Mark exhaled hard and rubbed his cheek quickly. Everyone keeps cloud backups on during this. Next page, Mara prompted, voice low but unwavering. I flipped to withdrawals within the last 6 months. A cash line glared from early spring, sizable and bare. Her pen halted above the figure and hovered there. What was this? She asked, gaze fixed on Mark. He stared at the number and blinked once. A vendor required currency for a rush booking. Name the vendor, her father pressed, eyes narrowing. Mark scanned the stack and didn't find it. He reached for his phone and opened search. No hit matched the amount or time frame. The room waited with breaths held tight. Mom shifted weight and stared at the floorboards. Stop the ambush tone and review the context. Mara met her eyes and never softened. Context comes after the truth lands. I slid forward the letter from the branch manager. Ownership verified today with stamp and seal. Her father studied the crest and nodded once. That part checks, the narrative still does not. Mark lifted his head and squared his shoulders. I changed one memo after my mother flagged risk. He tapped the patio line with a single knuckle. That is the relabel you are seeing now. Mora's mouth tightened as she lined up facts. Flagged by whom, then routed to whose company. Her gaze moved to the invoice again and stopped. Your fix benefited your side without notice. Dad opened his lips and then closed them. We intended to reconcile after the ceremony. Mara blinked slowly and let the silence burn. Reconciliation is not a plan, it is an excuse. Her father checked the time and set his phone down. We pause all transfers pending third-party control. He slid a card toward the center for custody. Neutral service scans documents and holds originals. Mark eyed the card and then looked to me. He gave a small nod that barely counted. I agree to hold with mirrored copies. His voice sounded sanded down to the core. Mara's mother reached for the ring on Mara's hand. Mara pulled back and kept it where it was. This object is not currency, she stated with steel. It stays until conclusions, not until comfort returns. Mom winced and pressed fingers to her temple. Our goal was stability before public vows. Mara tapped the invoice again with a quick motion. Stability built on opacity is collapse waiting. I opened my notes and drafted bullet points. Transfer details supplied, conflicting memos acknowledged, LLC link confirmed. I added one line about the cash withdrawal. Vendor identity pending. Proof requested on record. A fresh message buzzed from an unknown contact. The preview showed a scanned retainer with NF again. Mara's father took my phone and read quickly. Council proposes a meeting at noon with scanners. Mark nodded twice and looked toward the door. I will bring raw bank exports on a drive. Mara's stare shifted from him to our parents. No edits, no filters, originals or we stop. Dad reached for the stack and paused midair. Who escorts these to the neutral office? I lifted my hand before anyone else moved. I will carry them with both families watching. Mara considered me for a long beat. Hand off outside under the porch camera. She gestured to the doorway without looking away. Now, before nerves invent new versions. We formed a narrow line and moved as instructed. Neighbors pretended to ignore while phones tracked us. A courier stepped from the sidewalk with a case. He opened it and scanned the barcoded labels. Place them flat, he instructed without ceremony. I did it and kept my wrists visible. He sealed the case and locked it twice. Pickup recorded, destination logged, chain intact. Mara exhaled through her nose and steadied herself. Her father texted the destination to 2 numbers. Mark watched the courier depart and clenched his jaw. Mom stared at the curb like it might answer. Back inside, Mara lifted her phone toward Mark. 3 items remain before noon, she declared crisply. Identity for the cash vendor, email thread around relabel, access logs for the LLC account. She lowered the device and waited for noise. Mark's eyes reddened as he nodded acceptance. I will pull each one and deliver without posture. He looked at me next and held my gaze. You stay beside me while I dig. I tucked my phone away and squared my shoulders. Then we start now and finish before the courier. Mara stepped aside and cleared a path forward. Bare facts only, every word gets saved. I opened Mark's laptop and hit screen record. Drive to exports, I prompted, ready for pushback. He typed fast and opened the finance suite. A loading wheel spun like a dare. Cash vendor first, Mara texted, message sharp and short. I turned the phone so Mark could read. He nodded once and started a filtered pull. A list populated with codes and masked names, waiting. One entry matched the spring amount exactly. Vendor field displayed only 3 initials. Expand the reference, I urged with a tap. A descriptor unfurled into a concierge booking reference. Concierge for what? I pressed as the clock ticked. Mark opened the attachment and scrolled with care. A deposit held tickets and block reservations. Recipient contact used a private workspace domain. Who requested this arrangement? I asked, breath held. He clicked reply on the oldest mail string. A forwarded note appeared with a single instruction. Use placeholder, confirm by text only. Pull messages around that week, I added quickly. He mirrored the phone to the screen. Search returned a number labeled with a heart. He hesitated, then tapped it open. A photo popped up showing patio bricks. Text under it read, payment handled, use code. Another line followed an hour later. Change label to materials if questions appear. Screenshot and forward to the group, I said. He captured the thread and sent it out. Delivery alerts stacked under our cameras. No one replied right away yet. Now the relabel trail, I continued with urgency. Mark opened email search and typed memo keywords. A system notification confirmed the edit timestamp. 2 minutes after the patio text. Okay, that ties the change, I said. Keep metadata intact, no cropping. He zipped the exports into a fresh folder. I named it with minutes and seconds for clarity. Access logs for the LLC account next, I pushed. He logged into the corporate portal under supervision. A prompt demanded a token from another device. Mark looked at me with a tight frown. We need Mom's authenticator, he murmured under breath. I nodded and turned toward the hallway. My phone shows she's in the den, I said. Let's bring a witness before we ask. We stepped in and Mom looked up slowly. Approval code request just hit my phone, she stated. We require the logs for the holding entity, I explained. Verification must show who entered and when. She glanced between us and folded her arms. Purpose of this access, she asked with care. Neutral review at noon requires pristine evidence, I answered. She unlocked her screen and slid it toward me. Mark entered the numbers and gained entry. Audit history appeared in a clean grid. I scrolled to the day of the transfer. 2 users accessed within 3 minutes. Identify user 2, I said, finger hovering. The portal listed a familiar email alias. Not Mom, not Mark, another family member. Mark stiffened and leaned closer to confirm. It's Dad's business address, he whispered. Jaw said. A note column displayed memo alignment review. Mark swallowed and turned the laptop toward the camera. I captured the page with time and session ID. Mom pressed fingers to her temple and paused. I asked him to co-check balancing, she offered. Mark stared at the screen and rubbed his neck. This places both of you on the ledger. Mara's text pinged through the quiet. Who else had credentials besides them, she asked. I checked the admin roster and counted aloud. 3 seats held admin status, including me. Mark turned toward me, stunned and pale. You were added last month, he breathed, eyes wide. A notification confirmed my invitation acceptance. I remembered nothing about approving that invite. Mom frowned and tilted her head slightly. I added you for delivery coordination, she said. No transactions, read only so you could fetch. Mark lifted a brow, unconvinced. Permission level reads editor, I pointed out gently. The portal showed an edit toggle next to my name. Mark tapped the privilege dropdown and recorded it. I felt heat creep up my neck. Mara called right then with no preamble. Put me on speaker beside the portal, she requested. I did, and the room felt narrower. Scroll to IP addresses on the disputed day. I expanded the session details and scanned rows. 2 IPs clustered near home addresses. A third originated at a cafe network. The timestamp matched the memo change precisely. Who sat at a cafe during relabel? Mara asked. Mark looked away and clenched his jaw. I was at the branch that morning, he said. His eyes flicked toward the doorway. Mom shifted in her chair and stayed silent. I refreshed the log and checked the host names. The cafe session used a tablet with a case. Device nickname read Family Pad. That tablet lives in the kitchen drawer, I said. Mark pointed toward the hallway with a jerk. We walked fast and pulled open the drawer. The tablet lay inside with a low battery. I plugged it in and waited for the glow. Lock screen demanded a passcode none of us knew. Mom stepped closer and entered 4 numbers calmly. The home screen filled with shared apps. I opened mail and searched the vendor string. Sent folder held the placeholder instruction again. A draft thread sat unsent with 5 attachments. One showed an image of cash on a counter. Who took this picture? Mark asked quietly, staring. Mom pinched the bridge of her nose and exhaled. I documented withdrawal for accounting reconciliation, she answered. I zoomed in and matched the serial last digits. Mara buzzed on the line, voice clipped. Did the cash hit any contractor that week? I searched the Notes app for project entries. A line listed a deposit to a wedding planner. Mark's head snapped up with disbelief. Cash to planner makes no sense, he said. I opened the planner receipt and scanned it. The memo referenced expedited cancellation coverage. Cancellation coverage for what event? I asked sharply. Mom watched me and blinked at the screen. Potential venue change due to family disputes, she admitted. Mark flinched like the words cut skin. Mara stayed quiet on the call for seconds. Then she spoke with measured precision and force. That money bypassed our vendor budget completely, she stated. It funded contingency planning without my consent. I opened a new note and logged it. Cash directed to planner for contingency coverage, I typed. Evidence includes receipt and matching withdrawal serial tail. Mark recorded my screen and nodded once. Mara's father messaged a single instruction to both phones. Forward the planner receipt to council now, he wrote. I hit share and added the noon reference. Delivery confirmation chimed with a sharp ping. Next item, Mara pressed, still on speaker. Recover the text that triggered relabel language. I opened deleted messages on the tablet archive. One thread had been wiped at noon yesterday. Try the cloud backup, I suggested with urgency. Mom opened the settings and scrolled to sync. A toggle had switched off 2 days ago. Mark recorded the screen and the exact timestamp. Who toggled that? Moira asked without a breath. Mom lifted her eyes but did not answer. The tablet listed the change under Family Admin. The email next to it matched Dad's address. I added a line to the running log. Sync disabled by Dad's account before pre-meeting, I wrote. Mark's mouth compressed into a thin line. He stared at the doorway until footsteps approached. Dad appeared and stopped when he saw our faces. We need your pass for the family email, Mark demanded. Dad studied him, then looked at the tablet. This has gone far beyond reason. Reason returns with transparency, Mara's voice cut through. Alex, keep filming while he unlocks access. I held the phone steady at shoulder height. Dad exhaled and typed credentials slowly. Email opened with a flood of notifications. Mark searched the memo keyword without blinking. A message surfaced with the subject alignment. The body read, "Retitle entries to reduce noise." Who requested alignment? Mara asked, keeping tempo. Dad swallowed and gestured toward the header. The origin showed the planner's operations inbox. Attached was a list of vendors in jeopardy. Explain how the planner directs account language, Mark pressed. Dad rubbed his forehead and finally answered. They flagged chatter that could panic relatives. They suggested we consolidate descriptions until after vows. Mara's silence stretched until I thought the call dropped. Then her voice returned colder and steadier. You let a contractor craft private ledger language, she said. Schedule counsel at 11 as well. Mark sent the relevant emails to the shared folder. I cross-checked timestamps against the withdrawal slip. Everything lined up with brutal precision. The pattern stared back like a map. One last piece, Mara insisted before hanging up. Who initiated the concierge booking in spring? I reopened the initial instruction and expanded headers. The original author field pointed to Mom. Mom nodded once without flinching this time. I arranged backup lodgings after a family blow-up, she stated. Mark's shoulders sagged as he took that in. I noted it and highlighted the header. Dad cleared his throat and looked toward the hallway. We need a unified statement before noon, he muttered. Mark shook his head and set his jaw. No unison until the record holds steady. I gathered all exports into a fresh archive. Hash values printed to a text file immediately. Mark copied them to a small drive. He wrote the hash on a sticky in block letters. Courier will ask for a digital mirror, I said. Prepare to hand off separate from the originals. Mom brought a clean envelope to the table. She slid it across and didn't meet eyes. Mara texted a new address for the drop. Neutral office moved to a different suite, she wrote. Security wants separate entrance for each family. Mark read it twice and tapped OK. We lined up documents, drive, and printed logs. I photographed each item with Me stamped overlay. Dad watched the process and stayed very still. Mom stared at the planner receipt like it hissed. Door, Mark said as he checked his watch. I opened it and found the same courier waiting. He lifted the case and scanned our codes. Digital copy now, he prompted with a nod. Mark handed the drive, shoulders tense and square. The courier sealed it into a padded sleeve. He issued a receipt with a unique string. I snapped a photo and saved it twice. Meeting time will hold if traffic cooperates, he added. Then he turned and started down the path. Dad looked at me with something like regret. Can this still end without a fracture? I can carry facts, I cannot fix trust, I answered. Mark closed the laptop and put it under his arm. Mara's name flashed again with one final line. Bring yourselves, leave excuses, noon is a verdict. Security blocked the doorway with a palm out. IDs up, phones visible, bags open. NF waited behind the glass with quiet patience. Mara stood beside her, shoulders squared for impact. We sat at a long table under a mounted lens. NF clicked a remote and the screen woke. Scope today, she started, eyes moving deliberately. Authenticity, control, and corrective actions before any ceremony. The courier case sat between us, locked tight. A technician scanned the seal and nodded once. He lifted the lid and arranged the packets. Every page landed under a scanner with a thrum. Mara watched the scan numbers crawl across rows. Start with the spring cash, she instructed coolly. NF pointed and the tech cued the slip. An overlay showed matching serial tails and the receipt. Planner received currency for cancellation coverage, NF summarized briskly. Not in the vendor budget, not disclosed to both. Mark kept his eyes on the table edge. He gave one short nod that tried to be steady. Next item, Mara's father prompted with folded arms. The edit logs for relabeled entries today. The portal snapshots I captured appeared on screen. User IDs, IPs, and the cafe device popped up. NF circled the cafe access with a red dot. FamilyPad at a public network changed descriptions, she noted. Session authenticated under the household admin account. She glanced toward my parents and waited for movement. Mom tapped the page with the initialed margin. I requested an interim sheet during rising conflict, she offered. Mara held her gaze without blinking once. You omitted me while securing power for yourselves. Dad leaned forward and interlocked his fingers tight. We sought stability while emotions ran high, he began. Mara's mother cut the air with a small gesture. Stability is earned, not declared. NF advanced to the planner thread flagged alignment. A waveform icon appeared beside the email header. Audio attachment found transcribed this morning, she said. She pressed play and a voice filled the room. Reduce descriptors that trigger gossip before vows, the voice advised. Use generic language, push questions past the event. Chairs creaked while the recording continued unbothered. Then it ended with a date and timestamp. Identify that speaker, Mora asked, eyes on NF. NF looked at the footer, then back up. Planner operations lead, she confirmed without flourish. Recorded during a routing call, then archived. Mark rubbed his jaw and stared at the carpet lines. Route the bill through a neutral account now, he said. I will replace the cash with verifiable transfer. His voice sounded worn but landing true. Corrective steps require joint authorization protocols, NF replied. 2 signatures for any movement until further notice. Mara nodded once like a gavel. That includes both family entities, not proxies. The tech flagged a second discovery on the screen. A filter rule hid messages with the word prenup. Creation timestamp aligned with yesterday's pre-meeting notice. Owner account matched Dad's business email. Heads turned as one, heat rose off faces. Dad tightened his grip and chose his words. I muted threads to prevent spirals before dinner, he admitted. Silence hit so hard the air seemed thinner. Mara slid off her ring and set it down. It didn't travel far, but the room shifted. Transparency reinstates the timeline, then the ring returns, she said. Her eyes never left Mark's. Mark stood and kept his hands visible. I authorize external audits on every shared pot, he said. Access for Mara and her parents begins now. He placed his phone and laptop in front of NF. Mom's breath caught and broke into a small sound. You hand out keys while strangers interpret our choices. Mara's mother didn't look up from the screen. When you hide entries, you choose strangers. NF raised a palm and reset the pace. Focus, we have 2 more items, she said. Source of the cafe session and the placeholder instruction. She toggled to security footage from a nearby store. The camera overlooked the cafe entrance and sidewalk. FamilyPad's case appeared in view for 3 seconds. A reflection on the door flashed a familiar posture. Mom pressed her lips tight and closed her eyes. I brought the tablet to print forms, she said. Then I relabeled to keep speculation from roaring. Mara's father tapped the table twice and stopped. You bypassed both signers while doing it. And the placeholder, NF continued, clicking again. Headers expanded and pointed to Mom's account. A forwarded line showed confirmed by text only. Mark stared at the words like they stung. Mara leaned forward and locked onto my face. Your message revealed this, do not back away now. My throat went dry, but I held her look. I will put the next piece in writing. NF slid a form toward each of us. At S stations, she said, tone brisk and neutral. Who changed what, when, and why under penalty? Pens moved in shaky strokes, including mine. I wrote a line that burned as it formed. I misrouted a photo and triggered exposure, I wrote. I will continue to document without altering anything. I signed and dated, my chest hammered. Mom's pen hovered over her page and stalled. Mark watched her hand and said nothing. She finally wrote, then pushed the paper forward. Her shoulders slumped like a tent losing poles. NF collected the forms and looked to Mara. Recommendation, she said with crisp authority. Pause the ceremony 2 weeks, implement dual consent, retain neutral oversight. After that, renegotiate terms in the open. Mara reached for the ring, then paused. She turned to Mark and let the seconds accumulate. Can you live with that without resenting me? She asked. His answer arrived fast and clean. Yes, because I resent the secrecy more. He slid the ring back into her palm. I will rebuild with logs, not assurances. His eyes flashed to our parents for a beat. Dad stood and adjusted his jacket with sharp movements. You choose spectacle over family discretion, he accused. Mara's father rose slowly and matched his height. Discretion without consent is a scheme. The technician closed the case and locked it twice. Copies sync to the archive, he announced. Credentials for the portal arrive within the hour. He handed Mara a code card and bowed out. NF gathered the room with one look. This is salvageable only with boundaries, she warned. Breaches restart the pause from 0 days. She pointed at the signature pages like a referee. Mark touched my elbow and leaned close. Draft a statement for the family chat now, he whispered. Short, direct, no defense of anyone. His knuckles whitened as he waited. I opened my phone and placed the cursor. Words formed under my thumbs with deliberate weight. I sent a photo that revealed hidden edits, I typed. We submit to neutral control, no more relabeling, 2-week pause. I held the screen for Mark to check. He read once and gave a tight nod. Send it, he said, voice almost steady. I tapped send and watched the blast land. Responses erupted in sharp bursts across the thread. One aunt demanded apologies before forgiveness could start. An uncle accused Mara's side of theater. 2 cousins left the chat without a word. Mom stared at her phone like it might blink. She finally typed a single sentence into the group. We accept oversight and will not add language again. Her finger hovered, then pressed send. Dad didn't type it all for a long time. Then his message arrived in 3 clipped lines. I disabled a filter, I acknowledge the error, I am stepping back. Mark exhaled and sat down for the first time. Mara slipped the ring back on, slow and deliberate. She didn't smile, she didn't need to. 2 weeks, she reminded without softening the edges. Every account opens, every rule unlearns. NF packed her tablet and paused at the door. I will circulate a checklist within the hour, she said. Complete the first 4 items today. Miss one and I advise cancellation. We filed into the hallway like a careful procession. Mara touched my sleeve and kept me back. Your mistake burned the cover off a rot, she said. Stay honest and you'll help repair the beams. Outside, cameras waited at a polite distance. No interviews, just lenses hovering like quiet insects. Mark raised a hand to block a question. I recorded him instead, proof of the promise. Our parents reached the curb and split directions. Mom turned toward home with slow, measured steps. Dad walked to the far lot without a glance. The gap between them felt like a drawn line. Mara joined Mark on the sidewalk and faced me. No debrief tonight, she said, jaw set. We complete the checklist first, then we talk. She gripped the code card and tucked it away. I nodded and placed my phone back in my pocket. A rideshare pulled up with a soft chirp. We climbed in without conversation, just breath. The door shut on a day that wow. De-echo. Halfway down the block, my screen lit again. The family thread pinned my statement at the top. Beneath it, a final message appeared from NF. Checklist shared, start with revoking old access, now.